He's, white with dreadlocks, kind of smelly. But we hit it off. By the time we got to San Diego, we were like on fire. We were like, oh my God, just like, what a great idea. We talked about it the whole weekend. Ideas are cheap. You can't really know if it's a good idea or a bad idea until you actually try to do something with it. Despite the fact that it was incredibly difficult, and there were many times throughout that journey where, we had all the reasons to abort and give up. But it was that what fueled our, motivation was the fact that we knew that we're building something that is helping other people.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Venture Vibes, where we hang out with cool people who build cool shit. Today, we have Yotam Rosenbaum, YC founder, startup, mentor, and investor. Welcome, Yotam. How's it going?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
How's life?
Excellent.
Big time difference there. How's your morning going? What's your morning routine?
Morning routine is usually around getting my son ready for kindy and dropping him off, and then coming back here and getting the day started. So today was no different.
So Yotam, question for you. When Elon's Starship is ready, would you hop on, assuming the tech is safe, would you hop on and migrate off planet and go live on Mars or somewhere else?
Now you made it a loaded question because you didn't say any spaceship. You said Elon's spaceship.
Oh, I guess, let me rephrase that. Anyone's spaceship, right? Let's say someone else comes along and makes a morally more acceptable spaceship.
It depends. I mean, first of all, how long is the travel, right? Do I want to sit in the spaceship for 3 years now to get somewhere else? What kind of life do you find when you get there? I mean, overall, I'm pretty happy with planet Earth. Yeah, I don't know. I'd much prefer us to put more effort into making sure that planet Earth, that our ability to live on planet Earth remains, as opposed to, hey, let's completely destroy planet Earth and then go and find a different place where we can go and destroy that other planet.
I think to some extent it's commentary that humanity, like what we've done to Earth, if we're going to do the same thing for every planet we go to, it may not be a great thing.
I always find it funny when we talk about the planet, like planet Earth doesn't care whether or not we're on it. So, if anyone is going to suffer, it's going to be humans, not the planet eventually.
Right.
And if we, if we disappear from here, then planet Earth will go back to being, Earth without humans on it.
Exactly. I was reminds me of the George Carlin bit, right? It's like people talk about saving the planet, saving the environment. Planet doesn't give a shit, right? Like,
Right.
it could be plastic bags all over the place. That's still Earth,
Right.
right? Just human beings will die from.
Exactly. Yeah, we're just
Changing
making it
environment.
harder for us to live on it in a comfortable way.
Yeah. It's really saving the current bio, right? Like humans and the current creatures that do well in this environment. We could be destroying that. But really, as you said, the planet doesn't care. The planet's seen other species flourish and die out before. It'll do it again.
Yeah.
It'll be just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of human beings is actually making plastic bags, right? That's the point George Carlin was making. That's the purpose. That's what actually Mother Earth wants us to do.
In which case, we're doing
really well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yo, screw these GDP reports and like human standard of living reports. I want to see
Right.
tons of plastic produced on a graph and
Exactly.
maximize it.
Right. Although I
What would you do?
must say here in
Yeah.
Australia, I don't see plastic bags anymore, almost ever.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do people do? Do you bring reusable bags pretty consistently? Do you
everyone-
use paper
yeah.
bags?
Just reusable.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really common.
See,
Well, I know Hanson
would you migrate off planet?
I mean, you know my answer already. You know, fuck no. Like, why would I take? I mean, I can barely stand a 22-hour flight.
Huh.
Why would I take a flight that's 7 months long and go to a place with no air conditioning? Like, that's fucking crazy.
Actually, for the latter point,
well,
it's going to be a
going to
place
be
where
all
air
air
conditioning is the only
Right.
option because you can't live outside.
Well, I mean, okay, so your life depends on whether air conditioning is working or not, which is even more
It
terrible.
already
So,
does. So what's your point?
no, I wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't do it. I think having the Yotam camp where, I mean, this is, yeah, this is the planet. I mean, we should just maximize this. And I understand the argument. You want redundancies. You want human beings to live out, the lifespan of potentially the galaxy. Yeah, I don't care that much. I don't really care about the abstract concept of human race. I have very low empathy for that. I only care about people around me, which will probably not leave for another 200 years. So who cares?
You may change your perspective once you have kids.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. So my question for you, Tom, is you being a YC founder yourself, you're now a mentor. You also invest in YC companies.
Hmm.
But is YC actually worth it nowadays? Like, why would a founder give up a large chunk of equity that early in exchange of, potentially something that's not directly beneficial to the early stage?
So the short answer is yes, absolutely. It is worth it. That's my opinion and also the opinion of pretty much any founder. I don't think I've ever talked to a founder, a YC founder, who didn't say the same thing, that pretty much it was a life-changing event, that like, there's life before YC and life after YC. Yeah.
In a positive way, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's true. You're giving 7% of the company for in very low valuation, but the reality is that you're pretty much guaranteed in 3 months to raise your next round at a much higher valuation than what you'd otherwise, because you just get the YC premium, and but that's the valuation and the equity. I think that's really minor. Like, that's not the issue here. The important thing is being part of, or of YC just gives you access to things that you otherwise don't have, mainly the network and the people within YC. And yeah, there's just no, you can't put value on that. It's amazing. I mean, it has, changed my life, changed the lives of many other YC founders. And I continue to enjoy from being part of that group of people and having that access. The investments that we make. I get updates from other founders and, like, read interesting things about what's happening, and often, find myself interacting with that. We now invest in every batch of YC, so a ton of interactions through that. And then, yeah, just have communications with other YC founders who either need something, or sometimes I would need something. So it's just a great group to reach out and help each other. And that's pretty much like, the amazing thing about it is, despite the fact that now YC, the it's probably more than, I don't know, 10,000 founders or whatever it is. But it still very much feels like a small group of people who treat each others like family.
Since 2005, there's been over 9,000 founders. I just looked this
Yeah.
up that went through YC. That's a big
Yeah.
community now.
Yeah. Hmm.
So bonus
Very
question on that. So what's your one advice for people to want to apply to YC? We know it's a pretty competitive process, right? But what's the one advice you'd give to someone who wants to apply?
It's highly competitive. I think the odds of getting in are actually less than 1%. I think that my advice would be, keep it short, don't bullshit, and just be very clear about, yeah, you have to be able to, highlight what's unique about you and your startup in a very short manner. I mean, just think about it from the perspective of the YC partner who is reading, hundreds of applications every day and trying to figure out the few that he or she want to interview. If your application is like 5 pages long, and it takes, it takes a long time to even understand what it is that you're doing. I'm just moving on, just not interested. So yeah, it has to be just really short, to the point, without fluff, without superlatives. Yeah. And the other thing is, YC really over-index on founders. Yeah, so they care more about the founders than the ideas. And yeah, it's really important to highlight yourself as an individual, like why you're so unique. What have you done, or uh, yeah, what makes you a unique individual that may fit this group of founders.
Cool. Well, thank you for those answers. I'm going to move us on to the next section, which is story time. And Yotam, this is the section where we want to get to know you a little bit better, right? We know you a little bit. We've met before, but our listeners may not have gotten to know you. So we want to start from the basics. If you could tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and if there's any interesting stories, I guess, about early life that would
Sure.
be interesting to our listeners.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Israel. I was born in Jerusalem. I was the youngest of four brothers. And all my three older brothers, they all played music. My mom played music. My grandma played music. So I was born into, a family of people who play music. And I think as a kid, it wasn't a matter of like, am I going to play an instrument? It was more like, okay, which instrument? And I started playing or taking piano lessons when I was maybe 5 or something like that. All I wanted was to play as well as my brothers, but I had no patience or discipline to actually practice. So I sucked. I mean, obviously, and I would get pretty frustrated about it. But I kept on, taking the classes. Meanwhile, I think from a very early age, I was really drawn into drums and drumming, but I felt ashamed about it. For some reason, I thought that the drums are for like, bad boys, for like, bullies, and like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to explain that.
But drums are so cool. I
May,
wish I was a bad boy when I was growing up.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I was trying to fit more into the good boy who, doesn't make a lot of noise. So it took a long time, and only when I was 16, I got over the, whatever. Like, I like this instrument, I'm going to start playing it, and yeah, and that's how I got into playing drums. And I also realized that if I actually want to get good at it, I need to practice. So that happened at around the same time. So I
So it
don't
was
know.
fun to play with you as a
Do you still
teenager.
play?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, in fact,
Yes.
my drum set is right here next to
Oh,
me.
nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So that was childhood, growing up, drummer. When you went to Berkeley, since you came from a big music family, was there like a big moment for you
Yeah,
for
so in
music?
fact, even in going to Berkeley, I was following the footsteps of one of my brothers, my oldest brother, who went to Berkeley some years before me. He at that point was already a professional musician, and yeah. So again, like I was, doing something that has already been done in our family. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, it was a big moment because, moving to a whole new country on my own, and also a bit of kind of a shock when in Israel, I felt like I was, uh, quite a good musician, pretty high level. I got to Berkeley, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm nothing. Like all of a sudden you're exposed. And going back to your question about YC and the magic of YC, I think that's part of it. You are
Hmm.
you're put within a group of very, very talented, smart people, and you really like, and that helps you like grow.
So you mentioned you moved to OA. There's no job prospect. Two friends. That's when you started your music production company, right?
Yeah, correct. So yeah, I moved there. Actually, I think the first thing that I did was post an ad on Craigslist. offering drum lessons. And funny enough, the first student who contacted me later became my co-founder.
Mm.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, so Joey Flores reached out, started taking drum lessons. Really interesting character. He showed up to the first lesson. I thought that he was a bum. He had like, dreadlocks. He's, white with dreadlocks, kind of smelly. But we hit it off. Uh, from drum lessons, we became good friends. From friends, we became roommates. And then we also put a band together. Joey would write the lyrics and rap, and I compose and produce the music. We had a 10-piece funk, jazz, hip hop group band called the Capitalist Hippie Complex. And yeah, and at some point, Joey said, "Hey, we should record an album." And I said, "Sure, we can record an album, but I can already tell you, like, it's going to be really difficult to sell it to anyone, because it's just difficult to market and sell music." Joey comes from a marketing background, and he said, "Yeah, don't worry about that. Like, that's my wheelhouse. I'll take care of marketing and selling the album." I said, "Okay, cool." So we spent about a year recording an album, and
A
ended up.
year.
Well, yeah, I mean, we didn't spend a year in the studio, but overall, like, just like writing the music and then recording and then post-production, all those things.
Were you both doing other jobs on the side to
So
sort of pay bills, or?
Joey was still doing his marketing job. He was making a lot of money, so he used that money to fund the band and the album and also and yeah, all the things related to that. I was doing other music gigs and just being a musician, doing a million different things. So we recorded the album, turned out fantastic. The band was basically like studio musicians, like top studio musicians from LA, people, that play with Stevie Wonder, like just like top level musicians, and also great people. It was a lot of fun. Recorded the album. We started gigging in LA, also some festivals. Spent about 2 years trying to promote the band and the album. And after 2 years, we had about 400 people on our mailing list, and we probably sold maybe 50 albums. So basically, we failed. And it
So
wasn't
Joey lied to you about, hey, let me take care of selling and marketing.
exactly. So yeah, and it wasn't for the lack of trying. We spent like honestly like tens of thousands of Joey's dollars trying all different services that's supposed to help musicians market their music, and they sucked. Everything sucked.
Hmm.
And one day, Friday afternoon, Joey and I decided to go for a weekend in San Diego just to kind of like reset. We are kind of bummed, and anyways, it was 2008, Friday afternoon, 4 or 5, going from LA to San Diego. It's like a parking lot, you barely move, so we're stuck in traffic. And I remember asking Joey, "Hey Joey, how is it possible that in your day job you're like crushing it? You're just like an experienced marketer, generating millions of dollars for the company that you're working for. Yet, with our band and our efforts to market the bands, the album, we're failing. Like, it's not working out." And we started talking about the problem that we're trying to solve, and very quickly came to the realization that the best way to market music is the radio. And traditionally, terrestrial radio, you can only fit 10, 15 songs per hour. But in 2008, at that time, Pandora and online radio was really booming, and you can fit infinite amount of songs, and also customize the song to the likes of the listener. And then we thought about the business model of Pandora, how they use music to sell ads and commercials for burgers, cars, and other things that you couldn't care less about, like as a listener. Like you came there because you want to listen to music. Every once in a while, you find a band that you really like. you'd probably much prefer to like learn more about the band than about the new Honda Civic model, right? And then we also thought about the business model of Google AdWords, how, small businesses can, even if they have a small budget, they can acquire like people who might be interested in their business in a specific area. And then we're like, well, hold on a second. We can like, why don't we kind of like merge the two? So create like an online experience where there are no commercials and ads, and will allow the bands and the record labels to actually bid for airtime. So if they have, a tour, they can buy airtime, a week before their show in San Francisco or a week before their show in San Diego, and be played only to people who are likely to enjoy the kind of music that they make. So, I'm a jazz artist. My music will be featured and played to people in San Francisco a week before my show. And then through that experience, I'll be able to advertise my upcoming show, my merchandise, my whatever. By the time we got to San Diego, we were like on fire. We're like, oh my God, just like, what a great idea. We talked about it the whole weekend. We're
What
so
did
excited.
all of that happen on a drive? Like this
Yes.
whole brainstorming session?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, thank
Um,
God for San Diego traffic, I guess. You had a lot of time.
exactly. Yeah. So ended up talking about it the whole weekend, got back to LA, continued talking about it. But honestly, like I had no intention whatsoever to do anything about it. Again, I was just a professional musician. What do I know about like tech or startups or all of that?
So even then, even when you had this aha moment of this idea
Mhm.
that later turned into Earbits, right? You had no intention of being an entrepreneur. I mean,
I
in
had
terms of
no,
a tech startup entrepreneur, I guess.
yeah, exactly. I think I've musicians are in a way they're kind of like they have a lot of trait like similar traits to founders because they have to hustle. They have to like, they're a business in a way. There is maybe a small
Yeah.
business. So
Right.
I think, I was always drawn to that type of lifestyle, but yeah, I did not really had no intention whatsoever to become a startup founder. And honestly, mainly because I just knew nothing about it. For me, a startup founder was someone with a hoodie who knows how to code and is probably really, really smart. And that was not me. So we
Hard to
ended
get
up,
hoodies back then.
I was more talking about the being smart.
Yeah, yeah. I gotcha.
Uh, we ended up talking about the idea for 2 years, and the more we talked, basically, what happened is that every musician or people in the industry that we shared the idea with, like we kept on getting like really positive feedback about it. Like, oh yeah, it's really smart. You should build it. Like I need it. Like I'll pay for this kind of service.
So you kind of did a bunch of customer research, sort
Well,
of kind of
we
not
without actually knowing that we're doing it. Exactly. Yes.
right.
Yeah, we just like share the idea with anyone who would listen, and overwhelmingly people said that it's smart, like yeah, you should build it. Cut to 2010. Both Joey and I were kind of like crossroads in our career. I was getting a bit burned out of like being hustling music, moving, jumping from one gig to another. Joey was completely burned out with his job. And I don't know, we just like one day we're like, man, how long are we going to continue ignoring this idea that we're really passionate about and everyone says that we should do? And in January 2010, we're like, well, fuck it, let's try, let's give it a go, let's see what happens. So we started a company. Um, at the beginning, I was like, okay, well, let's see. It's an experiment. I'm not closing shop yet as a musician. So I kept on like, doing some gigs and getting some income through that. But we started and we had to figure out what to do. And one of the first things that we had to do was to find a third co-founder who knows how to code. And within a few weeks, we bumped into Ben Bryant again, like we just told him what it is that we're doing, what's our mission. He was like, "Oh, that sounds cool." I'm like, I'm in. And really, it was as
That's it.
simple as that. Yeah. And he just started building the platform. Now, just to explain like the how complicated it was, like the thing that we're trying to build, it was actually a two-sided marketplace because in order to get listeners, you need to have music, like a music catalog.
Right.
In order
Right.
to have a music catalog, you can either go and pay like a licensing fee, which kind of like goes against the very unique business model that we're developing. So we're not doing that, which means you have to go and actually get permission from each band or record label to use their music to to play to your audience, which is exactly what we did. So we started, I mean, I started by reaching out to my network of friends and people in the industry, and just by explaining, we didn't have anything, we didn't have a website with like, so it was just an idea. So just start reaching out, explaining what it is that we intend on doing, and yeah, so started getting CDs from friends and people, and then one of my friends said, "Hey, you should actually reach to. I work with this small record label. You should reach out to them." So I did. Again, just email explaining what it is that we're doing, and to my surprise, they sent me a hard drive with the entire catalog. It was a small label, but I was like, "Whoa, that's
Wow.
interesting." So I started reaching out to other record labels, and before you know it, honestly, like, you know, I've gotten like boxes of like full catalogs from reputable record labels showing up at our house, just based on what it is that we're going to build. There was no website, no product yet. I think that was one of the aha moments for me. We're like, okay, we're onto something. Like,
So, so do you think it's like, the idea is really appealing, or were you like an established musician in like a,
the reason they were willing to play along was because the concept of what we intended on building was really, the base of it was to empower independent musicians and record labels, and to allow them to market themselves effectively. And we explained it, well. And there was also very little barrier to entry. So, all we ask them is, hey, if you give us your music, we'll get it into rotation. You don't have to pay anything. It's free. Later on, like, as we build the platform, we intend on also providing some services where you'd be able to, pay and get more promotion. But don't worry about that. So there's really very little risk in them allowing us to do that.
Right.
Um,
So you're solving a problem that these labels had, and
exactly,
you're
and that
asking for very little.
right. And when I say the aha moment for me was like realizing how acute of a problem it was, for not just for us as musicians, but for many other people, including like, record labels with like, artists that you would know. So
Mm.
we're not talking about like, someone in their garage making shitty music, which by the way, we're also very strict about the quality of music that we let into rotation. At the time, you guys are maybe too young for that, but MySpace was a thing.
Oh, I
uh,
had a MySpace page.
Okay, so like, you could go to MySpace and listen to music, and it was horrendous because everyone was allowed to put their music on MySpace. And, if you let anyone do that, like, not everyone is a great musician. We wanted to have a very good listening experience. So we actually had an editorial team that would listen to every submission and decide whether or not it's worthy of rotation on Earbits. So, 3 months-ish into it or so, we had maybe 100 artists on the platform. We launched the web platform, um, and we applied for YC. Actually, I think we applied before we launched, and we didn't get in. And
Mm.
then we applied again, and we got invited for an interview. Actually, a funny story about YC. I don't remember exactly the order of things, but one of our advisors, Vichel Garg, who is an amazing person, advisor, just helped us so much, and actually to this day continues to help. He told us, "Hey guys, why don't you apply for YC?" We didn't know what YC was, but at that point we've already launched, and we were like, "Oh, we're too far along for that. Like, we're already."
How did you know them?
Knew who?
The
Did you
advisor.
say Vitri, the
Habitual?
mentor? Yeah.
So one of the first things that we did when we started the company was put together a board of advisors, and we tried to assemble people who will be really helpful for the kind of business that we're building. And being it, kind of a merge of like Google AdWords and a streaming platform, we knew that we need, expertise from all these perspectives. So Avichal was one of the lead developers, I think, of Google Ads at Google. In the past, at that point he already sold his second startup. First one was sold to Google, the second one to Facebook. And Joey just reached out to him again, like explain what it is that we're trying to build, and ask if he would be happy to be an advisor. Mitchell said, "Yeah, well, like, how about next time you're in the Bay, just drop by. We'll have a chat." So we did that. And he said, "Yeah, sure, I'll help you guys." And honestly, it was just, yeah, having someone like that on your team is just amazing. We had other advisors. We had like the legal counsel of EMI Records, one of the major record labels, on our board. So any questions or difficulties with like licensing and copyright issues, which we had to deal with quite a lot, we had her on our team. So it was really, really beneficial. So yeah, Vichel said, "Hey, you should apply." We were idiots. We were like, "No, we're too far along." Vichel is smart. He said, "Why don't you apply? And if you get if you get invited for an interview, you can decide whether or not you want to go in." So we did that, and yeah, we got invited for an interview. So we reached out to a few YC founders, just to have a chat before the interview. We talked to 3 different founders, and by the time we finished those calls, we were like, "Holy shit, we need to get into YC!" Like everything I told you earlier, that's what we heard from other founders. It's like it changed my life. It changed the outcome of the company. Yeah, best thing that ever happened to me.
And this was the second time you applied, because the first time you got rejected, then you were invited to do it again.
Then we applied again and got invited for an interview, which is a very common thing. Like many YC founders don't get in on the first try.
They were based on the same team and idea, though, right? What changed that you got in the second?
What changed? We had more traction. We had we launched the platform. We also created like a partnership with another website that was supposed to like generate a lot of traction. It didn't work out at all, but it looked good on paper.
Right.
So yeah, they invited us for an interview. We drove up to the Bay, the 3 of us, and we walked into the room, 7 YC partners, small room, PG in the center, and just 10 minutes of like, questions. Luckily, Joey's both fast thinker and speaker, so he did most of the talking. And I remember there was a point in the conversation where PG goes like, "So let me get it right. You're saying that not only you're not going to pay the record labels royalties, but you're going to have them pay you to get their music on the radio?" And we say, "Yep." Said, "I love it."
Yeah. That was probably at the time unheard of, right? That model.
Yeah, it was like completely opposite to everything. Absolutely. Yeah. But frankly, so many music startups at the time failed because of copyright issues and being sued by record labels. So we're like, yeah, we're not doing that. we will get their permission to use their music, but we're not paying them royalties for that. Because again, like we're not using their product, their music, to sell a different product, right? This is
Right.
completely small.
Right.
Anyways,
So small acquisition cost for the labels to sell their own stuff.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I have a question there. So,
Yeah.
you mentioned you didn't really have any experience running a company.
Yeah.
I guess besides being a musician prior to Yearbits,
Yeah.
but feels like you guys are doing all the correct things, like customer research initially, hiring some people that are experienced have different expertise into a board of advisors, applying to YC. Like I guess like who is the brain behind this decision? It's
Joey.
like how
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
So
the
was
short
was
answer to
he
that question. So Joey had some startup experience for sure,
got it.
and he also, like, the minute that we decided to start the company, he just immersed himself in the startup, like, world, and just like self-educated himself on like everything that one needs to know about startups. And yeah, like all these like early, actions are everything is attributed to Joey. Um, I was really good at just executing on things and getting things done. I think that's my forte.
Right.
And also, I remember when we started the company, I told Joey, look, I'll be in charge of music, you'll be in charge of business, and Ben will be in charge of tech. Took me about 1 or 2 weeks to realize how ridiculous of a statement that was, because, like, as you know, like startups, the million things that needs to get done. And so I started picking up doing random things that were outside of my comfort zone, and to my surprise, I actually really enjoyed it. And actually, the thing that at the end of the story, like, of 6 years of Earbits, I what I really cherish most is actually the opportunity that it gave me to learn all these different skills. I didn't become an expert in any one of them, but I became quite good, or good enough, to do a lot of different things. So that was a lot of fun.
First thing that caught my attention is the fact that you came across this idea and you noodle on it for 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? You had this insight, and then for 2 years you went around telling people about this idea. And I have several friends who, are prospective founders. They've been thinking about problems to solve. And it's not uncommon for people to keep their ideas a semi-secret, to say, hey, here's my pitch, don't share it with other people.
Yeah.
I don't want people to steal my idea. You almost did the opposite, where you've been telling everyone who, wanted to listen about your idea. Nobody ever stole it, though.
Ideas are cheap. I mean, an idea is just an idea. You can't really know if it's a good idea or a bad idea until you actually try to do something with it. And when you try, it takes so much effort. I mean, look at successful startups, and how many of them, like, I think most of them didn't actually start by doing what they ended up doing eventually. And that's part of the reason why YC over index, founders over ideas, because ideas are likely to change, founders are less likely to change.
Right.
At the beginning, we were paranoid that people will steal our idea, and when we tried to have like talk to investors, I remember early on, we like for a minute like asked people to sign NDAs, and like to like realize how like crazy that is. Like nobody would sign an NDA.
Yeah.
When we actually started building the company, and the more we were building the company, we're like, good luck, come steal the idea. Good luck building this. It's so freaking hard. Like, go ahead, try doing that, right? And I think that
Right.
is true for any like any idea that actually has legs. It's not like, oh wow, brilliant idea. Like overnight, it will turn into success. It just doesn't happen this way.
That's a really good point. One follow-up question I have there is, if you think about, and you're an investor as
Mhm.
well, when you think about evaluating startups, of course, one component is the founders. One component is the idea, and you just mentioned that idea is like a much, much less important factor in that. What other factors are important to you, right? Do you look at, for example, the TAM, or what are the factors
Yeah,
that
so
matter?
the opportunity. So when I say, the idea doesn't really matter, but the market opportunity matters a lot. So, if you have what seems to be a fantastic idea or opportunity, but you can only serve 10 people and charge them $1 a month, well,
Right.
that's not a startup idea, right? Uh, so there needs to be a big enough market opportunity to get excited about as an investment. Yeah.
Right. So some kind of math around like the total addressable market, the
Yeah. Yeah.
incumbents in the space maybe with a certain revenue. So you think that you can compete
Demonstrating
with them.
that there's a big enough market who may need what it is, or that suffers from the problem that you're trying to solve.
Um, so you got into YC, you had a good time there, helped your grow your business.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the definition of good time. No, because it was, I mean, think about it. I just felt very misplaced or like out of place at
mm,
YC. I mean, the majority of YC founders are. I was well, I was probably 33 at the time, so I was probably actually the older founder at the batch
Hmm.
in our batch. We're 43 companies, about 120 founders, something like that. Mostly young male in their 20s, just out of Stanford, MIT, Harvard, or just dropped out of the schools. Um, and to me, everyone seemed very smart and as if like everyone knows what they're doing except me.
Hmm.
Um, that perception has changed over time, like as I became more familiar with like what it takes to build a startup. I realized actually nobody has an idea what they're doing. Everyone is trying to figure it out. Yeah, there are smart people, but actually I'm also smart, just in different ways. But yeah, I mean, it was a very unique experience, but also a fair amount of pressure. I mean, most of the pressure is kind of like self-inflicted pressure, but you have demo day in 3 months, and you know that all these other founders are going to pitch as well, and you just try to kick ass as much as possible and get as much done before that really one unique opportunity. So yeah, I think I was pretty stressed out overall.
right. But it's a
Yeah.
useful experience, you would say, right?
Oh,
Definitely
absolutely.
help the company to
100%.
grow.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, how long? So you guys had, I guess you were running Earbits as a co-founder for 3 years before you exit?
More like 4 years. Yeah.
4 years. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
So you guys sold to it's called U42, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And but you still work there after
Yeah.
it
So
got
after
acquired.
the acquisition, I stayed on board for another 2 years. I managed the office in the West Coast, and the team. Yeah, until 2000, the end of 2016. So that was 6 years of Earbits, and at that point, I felt like, okay, it is time to move on. It's been a great journey, but I just felt like it was really time to move on and do something different. And
So could you tell me a little bit about very quickly, I guess, not every entrepreneur gets a exit, right?
mhm.
And not every person gets an exit stayed at the company acquired them. So I guess um, what was that experience look like, and why you choose to stay?
I mean, for us, they acquired us because what we built really aligned with their bigger plan and what they're building. And they basically said, "Hey, come be part of this bigger company, which will allow you to give you more resources to continue doing what you started." So, like full autonomy to basically continue doing what we've done, which worked out really well for us because we had good traction. We built the company, but we also realized that like we didn't have the kind of traction that would allow us to actually go and raise the next round. So we knew that, the options are either get acquired or shut down, basically.
Right.
So getting acquired by someone who basically, believed in what we did and gave us the resources to do it was perfect. So there was no reason for me to not stay and continue doing what we started. But again, like after, at the end of 2016, I just felt like, okay, I gave it everything I had, and it was just time to move on. So moved to Brisbane with Mike and his startup. As expected, I mean, the startup went back to Australia after a few months, and I stayed, and one thing led to another, and yeah, I mean, we're here, and we're not planning on going anywhere else.
What are you up to these days, Yotam? Now that you have a startup and a successful exit under your belt, you've done, the startup life, you've done something else. What are you doing these days, and what are you passionate
Sure.
about?
Yeah, so mostly investing. Despite the fact that I've resisted calling myself an investor for many years because I really still do feel more like a founder than an investor. Starting 2017, Ben, one of my Earbits co-founder, um, proposed starting to investing in YC companies, but taking a different approach instead of like trying to cherry pick winners, actually doing more like an index fund.
Hmm.
So investing in large number of companies from each batch. So we started doing that in 2017, and to date we've invested in 250 YC companies, raised five funds. We've just finished investing in the last batch, investing in 82 companies from the last batch. So we're doing that. Additionally, I also work here in Brisbane with a small VC firm called 77 Partners. It's the complete opposite of the Access Fund, what we do with YC. With 77, we invest in very few startups and also just provide a lot of like hands-on additional like help for the founders. Um, yeah, that's what keeps me busy, and just working with founders, mentoring, helping. Yeah, that's what I enjoy doing most.
Yotam, thank you for sharing your story. Definitely super interesting going from, being a musician and then to being a tech entrepreneur and now an investor. After all of this life experience, one question we ask every guest here is, what is success to you? Right? Most of us like to be successful in life, and everybody has their subjective definition of what that means. So,
Mhm.
what's it to you?
I think I get the most satisfaction from doing something that helps other people in a meaningful way. Um, So I can talk about success in a more like in a micro level of like a daily success as opposed to like lifetime success. Like for me, a successful day is when I had when I had a conversation with the founder and it was really helpful to that founder. I feel like, okay, I used my skills and my knowledge to help someone else, and that makes me feel good. So if you take that and then try to answer in the macro success, I think it's basically the same thing, but like on a hopefully larger scale, despite the fact that it was incredibly difficult. And there were many times throughout that journey where, we had all the reasons to abort and like and give up. But it was that what fueled our, motivation was the fact that we knew that we're building something that is helping other people, and that we're like just empowering people that need it.
Right. So would you like at the life level, right? Let's say one day, 50, 100 years from now, you'll look back and you say, hey, this is a life well lived, right? This was a
Mhm.
successful life. What do you think the ingredients are? You mentioned basically working on things that help a lot of people, right? Is there like a particular cause that you're passionate about? Is there particular things you're looking for?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a
So.
family, maybe it's.
Mhm. within a company, I always enjoy trying to identify what is the biggest problem, or like the most important, like the most acute problem, and try to help with that, right? Because that will make the biggest difference, like the most difference. And like, when you do something like that, you feel satisfied. In the same sense, I feel like uh, just problems as a whole in the world, like I feel like I would want to do my part in trying to solve big problems. Big problems right now, climate change, things like that. I'm trying to figure out, how do I fit in with my skills and expertise to do my part in solving those kind of big problems. I think at the end of the day, like, we're humans, we're social creatures, and having a strong, family or social, life around you is a lot more important than what people actually, I think, realize, particularly like people like us who are obsessed about, like, building companies and doing things like that. But at the end of the day, like, what truly makes me happy is, yeah, having my family, both, the close family as well as the extended family. Yeah, actually, a couple of years after we moved to Australia, we also moved my parents from Israel to Australia at the age of 77. So we have them here as well. And yeah, it makes a huge difference. Absolutely. That was actually part of the reason why we decided to move to Australia, because again, like, we were thinking about, starting a family, and just thought that it would be nice to be close to family while we do that. I've seen, friends in LA, or also in Boston, like, raising kids kind of like in isolation, and it's a different experience.
Would you say the advice then, for people who are going to try and build a startup is that you got to be realistic, right? If you're trying to start a family, maybe don't do it at the same time that you're starting a company.
Generally, yes, but you don't always get to choose, right? And also, it's not, nothing is black and white. There are, like, many startup founders who've been successful in doing both at the same time. It's challenging, but many things are challenging, right?
Cool. Yeah, Yotam, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing your story. Super interesting. Obviously, Seed and I have been curious about starting a company for a long time, so would love to at some point reach out to you for any sort of additional advice as we
Sure.
maybe get a little bit more serious.
Well, here's an advice right now, right away. Don't wait too long. You'll find yourself married with kids.
I mean, you sat on the deal for 2 years, so
yeah, that's true.
So we still have about a year and a half, right? But then the other thing you said is that the idea doesn't really matter. So I think the thing we need to focus on is finding the right market, and maybe a market in which we have the right insights and connections.
And also just finding something that you care about. If you don't care about it, if you're not passionate about it, it's going to be just torturous.
And I think the general gist of it is just go do it. There's only one way to find out. And we can ask a million people these questions, and people will say, nobody knows your answer. You just have to do it. So we should rename the podcast the Overthinker Podcast, where we ask a million questions before we do something that we should have done a year ago.
Yeah, 100%. At the end of the day, like, the best way to actually learn is by doing things, and trying, failing, learning, all of that. I mean, it's great to learn and to by talking and reading, but at the end of the day, it's the doing that really makes the big difference.
It's touche. Just do it. This podcast brought to you by Nike. Find our affiliate link below.